Welcome back. Today we're going over constructing triangles, and in that one we're going to be working with the triangle inequality theorem. There's a couple of pieces you need to know in order to understand that. So starting out, the order of the triangle to be formed, in order for it to be formed, there has to be two sides that are greater than the length of the third side. And basically what that means is that you take the two shortest sides, and those two shortest sides have to be longer than the longest side. So if we take this example here, triangle ABC has a length, side length for A is 7 centimeters and B is 9 centimeters. That means that the third length here, it has to be less than those two amounts. So if I say this one's, the side C has to be less than 16, but it also has to be greater than 2. Now, how did I get those two numbers? Well, first off, I just did 7 plus 9 to get 16, and then I did 9 minus 7 to get 2. And so that means for this, the length here, this side, in order for it to form a triangle, the triangle has to be, C has to be greater than 2 here, and it has to be less than 16. So we read this one, 2 is less than C is less than 16. And that basically just means that it has to be larger than 2, but smaller than 16. And if it is, then it will form a triangle. When the three lengths meet the inequality triangle theorem, then there will be one unique triangle formed. So if we meet this theorem, we are able to form one unique triangle. Okay, so with that information, here we have problem number 1. We're going to use the theorem to see if this can form a triangle. So we're going to do every possible combination as we look through here to see if these 3 units will measure up. So starting out, I'm going to go ahead and just take those 3 units, and then I would say, okay, 5 plus 7 is what compared to 13? Well, that is going to be less than. Then I go to the next one. 5 plus 13 is what compared to 7? And notice I'm just using the same 3 numbers. That's going to be greater than. And then last but not least, I've used 5 and 7, 5 and 13. I'm now going to use 13 and 7 here. So I have 7 plus 13 is what compared to 5? And it is greater than. Now if you look at this, we have these two sides are going to be greater than that one. These ones are going to be greater than that one, and this one is going to be less than 13. But basically what happens here is this is not going to form a triangle because the sum of 5 and 7 is not greater than 13. So this side right here, because that's not greater, it will not allow us to form a triangle. Number 2, I go ahead and take those 3 same measurements and I combine them. So I have a 4, 6, and 8. So I would do 4 plus 6 is what compared to 8? And that is going to be greater than. And then we have 4, 8, and 6. 4 plus 8 is greater than 6. And last but not least, 6 plus 8 is what compared to 4? Well, that would be greater than. So you can see that any combination that we do with these will always be greater than the actual number. So this one does form a unique triangle, and that's because the sum of any two sides is greater than the other side. Okay, next part. Now using a protractor, you went through a lesson today with how to use a protractor, just to remind you what to do. But we need to go ahead and use a protractor to find the angle of 75 degrees, 105 degrees, and 29 degrees. Now, because of the app that I'm using, it doesn't let me use protractors as I would like to, but I have put together a little piece. So we take this protractor, and this protractor here, I line up the center dot over with that outside edge and line up this bottom side here so it's equal with that line. And then I just start counting up. Now I believe this one said 75, so I'm going to start from 0 and I start counting up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and then halfway in between is 75. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point there, and then when I put the point, I'm then going to just draw a ray, which is just an arrow, and that gives me 75 degrees. I then would take the protractor and do the exact same thing for the next 2 angles, which in this case 105 degrees, that's greater than 90, so I know that it's going to be greater than this 90 part, and it's going to come over in this region here. So if I were able to move the protractor over, I would, and so I already moved it and used it, so here's what 105 would look like, and then 29 degrees would look like something like this. In addition to that, we have an angle sum, the sum of the three angles is in a triangle is 180. Now this is huge. We've gone over this, but it needs to be something you need to remember with all the stuff that we're doing, that every triangle will always add up to 180 degrees. Now we can determine if the conditions lend themselves to create one as far as a triangle or more triangles, because there are certain criteria that if you give them that criteria, you can have a lot of different triangles. If you only have a specific set of criteria, then you might only be able to make one triangle with that. It'd be like giving someone some ingredients. If you give them very specific ingredients, they'll most likely only be able to make one type of thing. But if you give them just a regular set of ingredients, they might be able to make a whole different type of things. So an example of that, if I give you an egg, like you can make that egg a lot of different ways, but it's still an egg. But if I were to give you a kit to make a cake, then you could make a cake, or you could use some of those ingredients to make something else. All right. So now constructing in triangles here, we would go ahead and take first off the steps that we're going to be doing. The very first one is starting with the beginning point. So we just put a point on the paper, and then we use the protractor and we draw the primary angle. To do that, we would have a bottom line, and then we would draw the angle that we're looking for. And I'll demonstrate this a little bit later. But then we would measure the line segment if necessary, and then we would draw the second angle at the end point, and we would check all of the angle measures to make sure that they're all the exact same, either the correct length or the correct angle. So using that information, we would go ahead and construct a triangle. This triangle needs to have a 45 degree, and a 90 degree. This one actually can be done fairly easy without a protractor if you know what you're looking for. And so to do that, you would actually just make two perpendicular lines, and those two perpendicular lines, if they are the exact same length, which I tried to get as close as possible, but if they're the exact same length, no matter how long they are, if you connect them, they'll actually make 45 degree angles if you've made this perpendicular as best you can. So that one actually doesn't require a protractor. You can do that one without a protractor. Now on this one though, there are a couple pieces, it looks like I went a little too far ahead. There are a couple pieces on this one that if we start out, I always start with my line, and then I have a 65 degree angle. So I'm going to put my protractor right here, and I'm going to measure from this bottom edge here up to 65 degrees. So if I do that, I go ahead and find that I have a 65 degree angle. I then pick up my protractor and put it on this side or up here. It doesn't really matter where you put it, but I'm going to put it over here and line it up, and then I'm going to find the next degree or pick one that I want, which in this case I'll go ahead and pick the 40 degree angle. So I find the 45 degree angle, and if I find that one, you'll notice that it automatically finishes up the triangle. And so this one right here, if I measure it, would be 75 if I was slightly, or at least close to accurate. So that would be, again, our 40 degree angle and 75 degree angle, and then I just have to erase the extra stuff, and there we have our triangle. And this triangle has a 75 degree angle, 65 degree angle, and 45 degree angle. Now in connection with what we talked about, this could be many triangles, and the reason for that is I don't know these side lengths. I could have lots and lots of different lengths that these could be that would give me these angles as a degree.
Teachers, excuse the interruption. At this time,
Alright, next question. So with this one, we have to be able to form a 30 degree angle, we have to form an 80 degree angle, and then we have to have a line segment of 6 centimeters. So this one actually requires a couple of steps, but the very first one that I would do is I would go ahead and draw out the 6 centimeters, and then I would put the other angles on them. So if it says there the line segment AB, so I would go ahead, get my protractor, and I would measure out the 6 centimeters. So I measure out the 6 centimeters, and now that I have the 6 centimeters measured out, I'm going to label that AB because it's the line segment AB, and then it says their angle A is going to be 30 degrees. So if I'm going to go ahead and pick up my protractor and move it up here, it tells me that I'm going to have this be 30 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point at 30 degrees, and then I'm going to draw my line, and then I'm going to move my protractor over to side B, And now that I have it on this side over here, I can go ahead and draw my second line with the angle of 80 degrees. So I go up to 80, and I'm going to go ahead and put a point just so I have a reference, and I draw my line. And now that I have that, I have the required information now. On mine, it's going to be slightly different because the scale is a little off, but it'll look similar to what you have on there. But yeah, so you can see that this triangle, if I go ahead and erase the ends, that we have a triangle AB. We have that line segment here, so A and B. This was 6 centimeters, and those degrees were measured out to be 30 and 80. Okay, we do the same thing on number 7, and then we're good to go. So go ahead and try number 7 on your own, and have a great day.